Good morning and welcome to Man & Machine's latest event, the Industry Direction of Travel Training and Professional Certification. My name is Nathan Brownsword. I'm the Sales Manager here at Man & Machine. I'd like to welcome all faces, I suppose, new and old in that respect to Man & Machine to our event here today. We are going to be taking questions throughout all of the different talks today, so please feel free to make sure you message in and pick up with us as we go, and we will be answering the questions both during the actual event, but also we're doing a live Q&A at the end. So just to talk you through the agenda for today, in terms of what we're going to be covering, we are, well, you're with me for the first step in that respect. So I appreciate in terms of the amount of people that are joining us here today, that most people don't know, or probably might be even new to Man & Machine or don't know exactly what it is that we do. So just taking you through a whistle-stop tour of what we do, what we've been up to over the last year, and just bring you up to speed in that respect. Once I've gone through that, I will then hand over to Ian. I'm just trying to flick on, sorry about this. I will hand over to Ian Ronksley of Ucas, who will be taking us through UKAS's strategy with and the program they have for the ISO 19650 Part 2 standard. That will last roughly around 20 minutes or so, and then what we'll be then moving on to is Phil Reed from buildingSMART. So it's a name very familiar to Man & Machine, which we're talking about the training and professional certification program that buildingSMART have been embarking on. Like I say, the questions, we'll be taking questions throughout, but we will allocate some time at the end. So please make sure that you use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. I believe it might be on the top of your screen actually, but make sure you've got the questions coming in, because we will be answering them, hopefully as many as we can during the event this morning, but also if there's some that we don't quite get time to cover, we'll take them away and make sure we're in touch. So in terms of Man & Machine, for people that don't know us, we're spread across two different industries in that respect, both from a manufacturing point of view, but also on the construction side. And why that's very important is in terms of the change in the industry at the moment, the supply chain in terms of what's going on in terms of the world of, I suppose, what we're talking about at this moment in time, that BIM and move to digital construction, and with product manufacturers starting to create, I suppose, 3D models, or if you like to call them BIM models, and then plugging them into the actual construction process. It's very important that as an organisation such as Man & Machine, we are able to only not support in terms of where my specialisms stand in terms of the architectural, engineering, construction side, but also from the process industries and manufacturing in particular. So it starts to go full circle. And this isn't just in terms of in the UK. We're spread across all 6 continents around the world. And in terms of our coverage, it enables us to help you and support you on your projects. I appreciate that most, or more often than not, you either have projects that are overseas, or you're working with either contractors or even people that are doing initial work for you within your organisation. They're spread throughout the world. I think gone are the days, especially over the last 18 months, where everyone's in one office, design teams are there, connecting, talking real time, and being able to actually support you, not from just a software point of view, but in terms of when things go wrong, having people on the ground in those time zones and being able to help you. However, in terms of our our main spread, we are predominantly in Europe. So mainland Europe is our core, especially around our German head office, and really, I suppose, in terms of the different countries around Italy, France, and in the UK, we do spread further afield and into Eastern Europe, but predominantly by having quite a wide coverage in different offices and people from both point of view in terms of account management, but also from the support side, we're able to help you. And I think that's really been key from some of the projects I've been working with or working on, and some of the customers I've been helping was recently over the last few months, where it's not just in the UK, we're supporting them, but we are helping them and helping their colleagues in different time zones in different countries. So appreciate there's obviously a lot going on in terms of the industry at the moment, and I think that it's quite telling that in terms of my time in Man & Machine, we've always talked about the different drivers, the industry drivers that are affecting your businesses, and also probably more importantly your projects. And this can be seen from a whole point of a whole different spectrum of kind of areas in that respect. Clearly, we're here to talk about, or here today to talk about the BIM side, what's going on within the industry in terms of ISO 19650 standards, now that we have the standards there. But there's also a real change in terms of the technology adoption. As I said to you at the start, when we started last year, I don't think any of us anticipated working remotely, working from home, and quickly more historic companies and organisations that have been in the industry for some time had a lot of challenge with people working remotely. And I think now the technology has always been there, and now was the time to actually implement it and use it. And it's something we've been saying for a long, long time. But I appreciate it's not just about working remotely, with obviously COVID happening in terms of the BIM side, but there's also, I suppose, the areas in terms of sustainability. And you only have to go as far as the news recently and looking at, rightly or wrongly, some of the things that have been making the headlines. And I think there's a sustainable impact in terms of what organisations need to be aware of, not just in terms of their projects and how they're delivering them, the amount of carbon that's been emitted into the atmosphere, but also in terms of once that building's being built, the products that you're supplying and you're using, are they as effective, as efficient in terms of, I don't know, might be water waste. We're starting to see it all, and that's from councils, a lot of local authorities, and that's starting to now be pushed down the supply chain. And it's now becoming quite a task in itself in terms of when you look at sustainability, technology, the BIM side of things as well, if you want to still, I suppose, use that acronym in that respect. There's a lot going on at the moment, and I think ultimately it's now driving that overall digital adoption and use of technology within organisations. Man and Machine are able to support you, and in terms of some of the areas and how we do that, it's quite thickly spread. Whether that's from a software point of view, I think in terms of actually supplying software, doing a bit of initial training and walking away, that will only take you so far in that respect. We now go end to end, from conceptual design, looking at that initial concept or that initial design, that initial idea, that kind of bright spark, so to speak, in terms of looking at an area for either for development or whatever it may be. And we go all the way in every single step through to completion and to facilities management. And that means that we can support you from our tech care support services, from our training, from looking at workflow automation. Appreciate Dynamo is a big thing at this moment in time, and leveraging kind of like AI in that respect, in terms of being able to take out the more mundane tasks and ensure that you can work and spend your time in the areas that are important for you. But we can go the whole spectrum in that respect in supporting you. I appreciate I'm not going to go into full detail of every different area on screen that you can see, because I think the important thing is in terms of what Ian's going to talk about with UCAS, and again with Phil Reed from buildingSMART. So I will hand over to Ian in just a sec, but like I said, please make sure that you drop us the questions as they, I suppose, as you think of them, so to speak. We do have a few colleagues here within our offices here at Man and Machine in the head office that will pick up the questions. You will see me a little later today, and we'll a little later this morning to answer some more questions, and also make sure that we're asking Phil and Ian any relevant things that come in on the chat boxes. But yeah, I'll hand over to Ian, and we're just going to make a transition now because Ian is joining us remotely. I suppose is the beauty of the technology. He will be going through his talk remotely, and we're just going to hand over. So bear with us a few seconds. Thank you.
Can you confirm you're seeing the PowerPoint?
Yeah, coming through loud and clear and visually clear as well. Thank you, Ian. Over to you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to Man and Machine for inviting me to this event this morning. My name is Ian Ronksley. As the slide says, I'm a development manager at UCAS. So my predominant role is to extend UCAS accreditation into areas where we've not offered accreditation before. And accreditation for BIM, I'm probably still going to use that acronym. Plenty of people still recognize that. That cropped up, and what I intend to do this morning is give you some background to UCAS, who we are, what we do, some of what we don't do as well, because you know that UCAS is with a K rather than a C. So we are not the University Clearinghouse, we are the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and how we do it, and then move on to the 19650 Part 2 project that we've got running at the moment. as we extend our activities, we have to do that in a controlled manner, as you would expect, to ensure that people will have confidence in the outcome of our accreditation. And the market can rely on those accredited conformity assessment activities. And so, you know, one of the main elements of this presentation in here, or UCAS activity, is to provide confidence in the outcome of conformity assessment activities. Okay, so where was it? Yeah, the whole purpose of accreditation is to provide confidence to whoever that might apply to. So government, to regulators, to specific markets, to consumers. And I think, again, it's important that we understand how this all operates, because, for example, of course, UCAS don't have monopoly on the use of the word accreditation. And so its use in common day language means different things to different people. I'll come on to the sort of formal definition of accreditation, which we use in conformity assessment activity in a short while. But first, just a little bit about UCAS. Founded in 1966, we used to go under a number of different names, NAMAS, NATLAS, but consolidated as UCAS in 1995. Not-for-profit and non-profit distributing organisation. Of course, we do make a slight profit, which is ploughed back into the business. We're the sole UK national accreditation body. Most developed countries have their own accreditation body. In Europe, through legislation, 765/2008, each European country had just the single accreditation body. So almost a monopoly situation, but then you add on to that the non-profit generating, etc., and it's all done in the public interest. So even though it is a slightly monopolistic situation, then we are sort of managed and controlled, as you will see, to ensure that we can't take advantage and don't want to take advantage of that situation. So yeah, we were up to a short time ago bound by the requirements on the European Regulation 765 from 2008. Of course, now that's been incorporated into European law. I mention this because a lot of accreditation activity now is around regulatory matters, although generally accreditation is a voluntary activity. But where regulation has a drive or requires accreditation, then we have to do that in certain ways against regulations, etc. And government recognise UCAS as the sole accreditation body. Some facts and figures on the last few bullet points there. Those figures were from a few months ago, so I can almost guarantee that they will have increased. So the number of accredited entities that we have, the assessment days that we turn out over each year, full-time staff. Yeah, I know we're over 270 full-time staff now, over 190 permanent assessment managers. These are our technical leads that liaise with our accredited bodies and generally lead the assessment. But we also rely very heavily on external technical support. When you look at all the sectors in which we're involved, including construction, we can't possibly employ all that technical resource in-house. So we rely very heavily on the recruitment of external technical resource who support us in our assessment activities. So the purpose, we deliver the UK's National Accreditation Service. We're part of this accreditation infrastructure throughout the world, where it's underpinning UK, but also global quality infrastructure through being an independent body, having the relevant expertise, and hence, again, we're back to this creating trust and confidence in the products and services that we all rely on as consumers. This is a triangle that we often use to show where UCAS sits in this sort of quality infrastructure. So if we start at the top, we've got UCAS accreditation. So UCAS is the national accreditation body. We accredit legal entities that offer some kind of conformity assessment. So our conformity assessment bodies, known as testing or calibration laboratories, inspection bodies, certification bodies, verification and validation bodies, etc. They are the UCAS clients, and they offer some kind of conformity assessment or evaluation activity to a market. So they are the bodies that UCAS assesses and accredits in accordance with one of the international standards in the IEC 17,000 series standards. And again, I'll come back onto that. So the conformity assessment activities are providing that conformity assessment to product and service providers, focusing on management systems, on product processes, services, persons, etc., resulting in assurance and trust and confidence for government, industry, and society in general. And UCAS at the top of that triangle, we too are governed by an international standard, ISO IEC 17011, and every 4 years we are peer evaluated by our colleagues from Europe. They send a team of experts in to cover our activities to make sure that we too are compliant with the international standard. And I can speak to the rigor, etc., of that process as I'm a peer evaluator myself. So at the end of next month, I'll be involved in a peer evaluation of our colleagues in the Netherlands to ensure that their service provision relating to accredited activities aligns with 17,011, such it maintains the assurance, trust and confidence that should flow from this quality infrastructure. I just mentioned here the definition of accreditation, and I don't try and remember it, I always write it down. So it's the third-party attestation related to a conformity assessment body conveying formal demonstration of its competence to carry out specific conformity assessment tasks. So when we accredit a body, we're accrediting that body to one of these international standards, and it's our independent, our third-party attestation that that conformity assessment body, let's say it's a certification body, is competent, is impartial and consistently capable of delivering that service, whatever that service is, to the market in which it operates. And when we accredit an organisation, we publish the accreditation and the schedule of accreditation, so publicly available information that people can look at to determine the scope of accredited activity held by that particular conformity assessment body. So it's this formal recognition of competence, impartiality and integrity, etc. That's, if you read the introduction to the 17,000 series standards that we operate to, then you will see those key words repeated over and over and again. And you know, this competence, impartiality, capabilities is key in this accreditation activity. So what does conformity assessment cover? Well, it covers a wide variety of activity. As long as it's an evaluation, then potentially it's an accreditable activity. And there's just some examples on there. I've highlighted the certification one because possibly in the participants here today, many of you may work in organizations where the quality management system is certified to 9001, or the health and safety management system, or the environmental measure. And hopefully if it's certified by a UCAS accredited certification body. And that's that additional layer of confidence again, that certification body has been assessed and accredited by UCAS to deliver that 9001 certification activity to the market. Yeah, so it's adding that value, and again I'll explain a little bit more shortly on the added value of that as well. So the right hand side, again, just some other examples of activities, of conformity assessment activities. So I'll skip very quickly over laboratories in a way, except that, look, we're in a construction arena here, construction sector. Many products are subject to accredited testing in UCAS accredited testing laboratories, certification bodies, inspection bodies. Yeah, we're involved in a number of different areas. And I hope you can see the different 17,000 series standards reference there. There is some overlap between some of these standards in the activities that occur, but generally the focus on what's called a different objective conformity assessment. I haven't got a great deal of time to go into detail of what that actually means, but the standards focus, for example, 17065, as we'll talk about shortly, is the requirements for bodies, for certification bodies that certify products, processes and services. So the objective conformity assessment is a product or a process or a service. If it was a 17024 activity, that standard relates to the certification of persons. So that's looking at defined competence criteria for an individual to undertake a specific task, and then taking that individual through an examination and evaluation process to either confirm competence, in which case that person can be certified as competent, or reject that person from the process because they've been unable to develop competence. So when we talk about accredited certification or certification in general, we have to understand exactly what does that mean. Is it the certification of a management system? Is it the certification of a product, process or service? Is it the certification of a person? Because there are different standards that relate to that activity. And that means there are different requirements placed on the certification bodies that UCAS assess and accredit for those different activities. Yeah, the structure of UCAS includes sort of external oversight, external governance. I'm not going to go into great detail on that slide, but strategy and policy, we have a policy advisory forum, as well as a policy advisory committee, council, which is linked to the UCAS board. And that sort of ensures that the policies and strategies that UCAS has as the national accreditation body aligns with the expectations of these member organisations, in alignment with our appointment as the national accreditation body, but also in compliance with ISO IEC 17011, the standard that UCAS has to operate to. I will quickly mention the sort of technical and market bullet points there. You know, we recognise we don't have all the expertise in-house here. So just like we resource and utilise external technical resource, in some sectors we recognise the need and implement that through using technical advisory committees to advise us on what the UK market looks like and what the UK market expects with respect to, for example, management system certification, or with respect to inspection body activities. So we have a number of technical advisory committees where interested parties, stakeholders from the sector come together, and UCAS can explain what we're trying to achieve and use their knowledge and skills to develop our new accreditation programs, for example, or to keep abreast of developments that we need to build into our accredited activities and the assessments that we undertake as part of those activities. Look, one of the main benefits of accreditation is it's part of this international network to ensure equivalence and acceptance of results worldwide, thus removing technical barriers to trade. So the concept is that tested, inspected, certified once here in the UK, then those test results, inspection certificates, certifications can be accepted elsewhere, Europe, worldwide. And so UCAS is part of 2 multilateral recognition agreements at the EA level, the European Cooperation on Accreditation. So even though we're now out of the EU at the moment, UCAS is still a member of the EA. But we're also members of the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum, who focus on certification activities, for example, as well as the International Laboratory Cooperation Body, ILAC, whose main focus is laboratory activity as well as inspection body activity. So in becoming UCAS accredited, the conformity assessment body then gets recognition of its certificates, of its reports, etc., through these mutual recognition arrangements, throughout the markets throughout the world. So again, it's intent to remove these technical barriers to trade. Quickly on this one, yeah, we do a lot of activity to support government, as you can imagine. And what accreditation can do is provide an alternative model to regulation. You know, at one end of the spectrum, if it's a regulatory drive and regulations are in place to ensure conformity, the use of accredited conformity assessment can contribute to that confidence as an alternative to a regulatory requirement. So, you know, that third party involvement again is providing confidence to markets and stakeholders and to government that requirements that may be enshrined somewhere, for example, in a regulation, are nevertheless being satisfied through this accredited conformity assessment route. And there's just some sort of slides, pictures there of involvement at the moment in government sort of related activities. But look, back to construction now. So currently UCAS is involved in a number of areas, accrediting bodies in construction, and I've detailed or listed some of them there, not an exhaustive list, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with construction product certification, which generally is a 17065. It's a product, a process or service that's generally a product that's being certified under using 17065. Competent person schemes, those competent person schemes in the UK, despite that name, are generally 17065 schemes for installer activities. So someone who's installing electrical installations, for example, there's accredited certification of those installer activities. Gas safe personnel certification, so I'm sure you'll be familiar with gas engineers and the need for them to be certified, and so we can go down that list, but it's just to give you a flavour of current activity. Which brings me then to BIM and where we are and what we're doing with BIM. So I've mentioned my role as a development manager is to extend activity, and we're now we're running a pilot assessment program with 3 certification bodies involved to, in a way, prove and test our capability to offer accreditation for certification to 19650 Part 2. But there's quite a bit of background to this, and this first slide is taking us through that background. We sort of first became aware of building information modelling as part of the government construction strategy way back over 10 years ago now. But it was really a statement that appeared in PAS 91 and Table 8 therein that mentions third-party certificate of compliance from an organisation with a related UCAS accreditation. Well, we started getting inquiries as to what did that mean, and quite honestly, we didn't know what it meant. We didn't know that statement was going to appear, and as you've probably already gathered from some of my earlier words, when you talk about a third-party certificate of compliance, what does that mean? Third-party certificate is independence. Compliance with what? Compliance with a product evaluation program, with a management system evaluation program. So we were unsure and sort of left a little bit in the dark. Okay, it's in there, but what does it actually mean? And that led to engagement with the BIM strategy group at the time and trying to understand what it was. How could accreditation support this strategy, whatever that strategy was, to help develop conformity assessment activities such that confidence would ensue from that activity. So we had this ongoing dialogue, and one of the big challenges was trying to understand, well, when it says BIM level 2, what's a common understanding of BIM level 2? Because it seemed to mean different things to different people, and what we really try to do when we move forward with an accreditation program is to have a degree of certainty that we know what is expected of us. We know what the object of conformity is, because if we don't know that, we can't direct the interested parties to the most appropriate conformity assessment standard. And if we set off along that path, that we take the wrong track very early on, it's highly unlikely we can draw things back in line as we go through the process. So this engagement carried on for some time and resulted in an agreement with BASE to conduct some market research to try and develop a common approach for accredited certification of something. But that something was still undecided. But let's have a look what the market has currently. And as the bullet says, that research showed that there was 13 different products, 13 different certification products relating to BIM level 2. Some of them were related around management systems, hence the reference to 17021. Some were certifying individuals, hence the reference to 24, and some were certifying processes or services, hence the reference to 17065. But even those that were falling under the 17065 umbrella, there were different offerings. So really that it seemed very confusing, and we were back again then to, well, if someone defines BIM level 2, then we all know what we're aiming for, and we can build our accreditation program to align with what certification bodies' interests are and what they are actually going to certify. So that led on to further discussions, but whilst that was going on, 19650 was being developed, and the other parts of 19650, which continue to be developed. The opportunity that gave was, here's an international standard now that contains a common set of process requirements. So no longer were we sort of in the dark. Now we've got an international standard that's potentially usable for certification, but it's got this common set of requirements so that multiple certification bodies can certify to the requirements contained in 19650 Part 2. So that really was the trigger then to get things progressing much more quickly, which resulted in our pilot program launched in December 2019, invited expressions of interest, and we expected probably more interest than what we actually got, bearing in mind we'd already identified 13 products back in 2016. But we've taken the project forward with 3 pilotees, and the pilot program is there to develop and validate our accreditation capability in accordance with 17011, the standard we have to comply with for 19650 Part 2 certification. So as project manager, I'm not an expert in BIM or 19650 Part 2, but I like to think I understand the different 17,000 series standards so that we can use the most appropriate one and focus our assessments of certification bodies correctly. But we still need to prove that, and because in a pilot program, things can jump out that you hadn't anticipated. Hence, it's a pilot program. But yeah, second bullet down. So if we're going to do that, what technical competence do we need? We need to recruit these people, hence the external technical resource. What's our assessment methodology going to be? Who are we going to invite to this? And we need to develop times of reference so that participants understand the restrictions and how it's going to operate. And that resulted in the 3 bodies. Of course, then COVID-19 impacted upon that program where we documented timescales, and the assessment program includes documentation review. So we get an application, we review the application, we review the certification scheme that incorporates the requirements of 19650 Part 2. So that's the sort of first stage in the process. We go to the head office of the certification body to look at how this new activity has become embedded into their overall management system designed to comply with, in this case, ISO IEC 17065. And so that's an assessment on site at the head office. But then we also, as part of the assessment program, we look at witnessing the certification body's assessment of their client to 19650 Part 2, because the sort of acid test from an accreditation viewpoint is, yes, you've got all the systems and procedures in place, you've defined competence requirements for your assessors, etc. So all that's looking good. Now we want to witness the delivery of that certification service with a live customer, so that we, with our technically competent team, have the confidence that, yeah, all of this is adding up, and we can accredit and the market can take confidence. So that's where we are now. Because of COVID, it's delayed the process. We've had to revert to remote assessments, which can and does pose challenges, of course. We're sort of working our way through that. We're at the stage now, as the slide suggests, that we've done the documentation review quite some time ago. We've done the head office assessments quite some time ago. We're now in the witnessing process, and we've done some of these. There's some feedback that we're working on now with the certification bodies involved. So it's still very much in progress, although it's been delayed by COVID and for example, our clients, the certification bodies, not having the usual staff on site, etc. So any questions, we'll come back to that in a short while. You know, I've explained the pilot program now, which is focused on 17065, which places requirements on bodies that certify products, processes and services. 19650 focuses on different actors in the construction chain and the process requirements to enable collaboration between different parties. So that's that pilot program. But, you know, there are potentially other conformity assessment activities that could become accredited conformity assessment opportunities. And I just put a couple of examples in here, just in a way to provoke thinking and stimulate thinking on, yeah, where else could this apply? Well, remember, UCAS role is, as an accreditation body, we assess and accredit conformity assessment bodies. We don't accredit training schemes or qualifications, but we can accredit certification bodies who certify training providers. So the training service provision could be an accredited certified activity under 17065. It would require a certification scheme that sets the requirements for those training providers. Equally, there could be accredited certification of a person's competence. So again, from earlier, this is certifying that an individual meets defined and documented competence criteria, the skills and knowledge that an individual requires to fulfill a task. And then a certification body evaluates that individual against those criteria using appropriate examination methodologies. And if that individual is successful in that process, then the individual is certified as being competent to do something. So, you know, another alternative that's in the mix for potential accredited certification activity. And just a couple of notes there then. Accredited certification is always third party, so the certification bodies, just like UCAS, are always independent bodies. They have to be third party conformity assessment bodies, otherwise we couldn't accredit them as certification bodies. That sets some challenges for wanting to be certification bodies. When we talk about accredited certification always requires a certification scheme. The scheme sets out the requirements which the product, process, service, system, person, etc. has to satisfy in order to be certificated. There's two hyperlinks there because ISO Casco have produced a couple of really good free documents. The first one is a generic document on how to develop scheme documents and draws interested parties as to what the content of a scheme document might need to look like. So if anyone is interested in schemes, certification schemes, then that's a useful document to look at. The second one is focused on ISO IEC 17024, so how to develop schemes for the certification of persons. So again, it's a useful document if anyone is interested or wants to know a little bit more about schemes where the intention is to certify the competence of an individual. And there's a note there that both the EA and IAF, European Cooperation on Accreditation, and the International Accreditation Forum have processes to evaluate schemes intended for international application. And the idea of that is to facilitate a single evaluation of that scheme as to its fitness for purpose, rather than someone having to approach multiple accreditation bodies throughout the world to evaluate the same scheme. So that's of interest to schemes that have a European or international appeal. So I think that is as far as I go. Sorry, I jumped back a slide. Yeah, thank you. I've really rushed through that, so I'm conscious there could be plenty of questions. I've not got the chat up on screen at the moment, so I'm going to stop sharing, Nathan, and hand back to yourself.
Excellent. All right, Ian, it's actually Phil taking over at this point. So thank you for that presentation. Hopefully you can hear me. If you could just confirm, Ian.
Yes, I can hear you, Phil. Yes.
Excellent. And I ask you that because we do have a question, and I think whilst we're switching over the screens, it will be worth asking you the question, and if you could answer it. So it's from Narciso Guerrero. I apologize if I've mispronounced the name. But I'll read the question out to you. It says, what's the difference between BSI, BRE, ICE and UCAS certification with regard to BIM level 2? And it goes on to say, we currently have a BSI certification for our company. I assume that's BSI's level 2 certification. And I have applied for the BRE individual certification. So I'd like to ask what the benefit will be to us with the UCAS certification. So I'm guessing there's a slight misunderstanding there about what UCAS are doing with regard to certification, because obviously you're in accreditation, but I'll let you answer the question if I may.
Thanks, Phil, and I hope I understood the question correct. Yeah, we're back to the triangle that I showed on the slide. UCAS is the accreditation body, so we accredit the likes of BSI, BRE, Lloyd's Register, SGS, the conformity assessment bodies. So a number of these bodies have had offerings on the market. We're back to the 2016 research that we did. And that was causing confusion in a way, because these were multiple offerings, all offering something slightly different. So did the consumers, did the interested parties, really understand what they were buying into? Was it relevant to the needs? So there's a separation there. UCAS accredits, BSI, BRE, etc. certifies something. In future, when BSI, BRE or other bodies become accredited for 17065 certification to 19650 Part 2, the market can take confidence and assurance that UCAS has properly evaluated the capability of those bodies to deliver 19650 Part 2 certification competently, impartially, and with capability to do it consistently. Yeah, so it's a different level. UCAS is the accreditation body. We assess and accredit these certification bodies here against 17065 for their capability, impartiality, competence to deliver 19650 Part 2 certification. And the benefit to the market will be that the core requirements are all coming from the same source, i.e. 19650 Part 2. Rather than something that may have been bolted on from a PAS or somewhere else. So the market will begin to see, under accredited certification, a common scheme, if I can put it that way. Just to pick up on one other point, I think it was a mention of for BRE person certification, individual. Again, we're back to what I stated as the different objective conformity assessment. We're not running a pilot at the moment, and there is no accredited certification under 17024 for BIM personnel, whatever that BIM personnel might be. 17024 again is certifying an individual's competence. So the necessary competence criteria, the skills, the knowledge, the attributes that an individual needs to have to match up with whatever the task is and the descriptor of that task, needs a certification scheme to develop, and then the certification body adopts that and implements that. We have no, as I've just said, we've not accredited any conformity assessment body for that. And our focus at the moment, because there was a bigger interest, was in organizational certification. So certification of an organization having the right processes that align with 19650 Part 2. So that's the big win for the market initially. So our efforts have been focused in there. If after we've run the pilot and that becomes mainstream business, if there's still an interest in accredited certification of an individual's competence for BIM something, then we're happy to discuss the implications of that with interested parties.
Thanks very much for that, Ian, and welcome to my piece now. So I'm Phil Reed, and I am here to talk about the UK, well, in fact, I'm here to talk about the buildingSMART professional certification. But as my head slide says here, I'm representing the UK BIM Alliance. So it's probably important for me to sort of unconfuse that very quickly. So for the purposes of this presentation, and actually for all purposes, the UK BIM Alliance, which I'll talk about in a second, and buildingSMART UK and Ireland are one and the same organisation. And my role in that, although my day job, as Nathan has already implied, is the Managing Director of Man and Machine, I'm here actually with a different hat on. I'm here in terms of my role within the UK BIM Alliance and by inference buildingSMART UK and Ireland with regard to the upskill and education programme or team that is behind the launch of the professional certification that we're about to do. And it is very distinct from what Ian's been talking about, which is a company certification. This is about individuals and certifying and qualifying individuals to have a certain level of digital competence, if I may, around information management. So I'm going to start because there's kind of more organizations now being introduced and really kind of try and, for those that don't understand who these organizations are, I'm sure many of you do, but I just want to get everyone on the same page very quickly, is talk about the UK BIM Alliance and what it is. Because, you know, we are passionate about what we are doing here in terms of getting behind the buildingSMART professional certification. So the UK BIM Alliance is exactly what it says in the first line here. It is our work is for industry by industry. What does that actually mean? Well, the UK BIM Alliance is an organization that is primarily made up of individuals that are working pro bono, so working for free to help drive the adoption of digital competence, digital technology, digital adoption in the construction industry. That's fundamentally what we do. And I think the important thing is those individuals are from many diverse areas across the UK and Ireland construction industry. So you'll find people that work in the committees and subcommittees of the UK BIM Alliance, from main contractors, you know, they hold senior roles in main contractors, they're consultants, they're vendors, technology companies, architects, universities, government representatives. So it's a huge group of people that have put their time to good use to try and make sure that we drive the adoption of digital technology in the construction industry. And as I say, for all intents and purposes for this presentation, you can assume buildingSMART UKI is the same organization, because a number of the people in both of those organizations sit in both the UK BIM Alliance teams and the buildingSMART UKI teams. And actually, you can think of buildingSMART UKI as a subcommittee of the UK BIM Alliance. So what are we here to do? So the UK BIM Alliance is really here to help the built environment sector. And we really want to help ensure that people are taking, you know, there's no, I don't think anyone's confused now that the industry is moving towards a digital environment in many different aspects. And there's lots of great things going on in the UK construction industry. And you know, we are here to help you do that. And you know, for some people, it'll be them taking their first fundamental steps to digital transformation. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that BIM becomes business as usual within the UK. And I shouldn't really use the word BIM, and we shouldn't really be using the word BIM level 2 anymore, because it is pretty much dead. But as Ian said, it's kind of a recognized term, so I'm using it here just to kind of introduce the concept. But what we're really talking about is information management. That's really the important thing. And by doing this, what we're going to be doing is really transforming and future-proofing the industry, because it's about the built environment. So it's not just about the design stage or the build stage. It's very much into the operational stage, as many of you will know. So we want to make sure that what we're doing today in terms of design and construction is future-proofing the industry and future-proofing those assets for many years to come. So what is buildingSMART? Well, buildingSMART is actually something slightly different. It is quite different. It is a worldwide industry body, again, primarily made up of volunteers. But I think the thing that is really important for you to understand is it is global in nature. So in every country, pretty much, there is a buildingSMART group, which is called a chapter. I'll talk more about that in a sec. And they are made up typically of thought leaders, specialists, experts in the industries in each of those countries. And they essentially have come together to do certain things. And, one of those things is driving the digital transformation of the built asset industry. And the other one is to help with, make sure that we are delivering these projects, these construction projects, through the adoption of open international standards. And one example that many of you will probably have heard of is IFC. And I think that these are really important bodies. And again, it's important to recognize that the UK BIM Alliance is essentially the buildingSMART UK and Ireland chapter that has input into and provides thought leadership from the UK into that global body. So we're very passionate about this professional certification, because what you can be assured of is that many experts around the globe have been involved in developing what I'm about to talk about. So it's got some real thought leadership in it, and it really is a great scheme that we intend to be launching in the UK and Ireland in due course. And when I say in due course, we're kind of in the midst of it at the moment, and I'll talk more about that as I go through the presentation. But certainly, a full launch is expected before the end of this calendar year. So what is the buildingSMART professional certification? It's essentially, if you've understood what I've said, it's all of these experts around the globe have sat down and come up with a global learning framework that allows us, organizations, to go out and educate and certify individuals, so that those individuals, you can be relatively well assured that those individuals will have a certain level of digital competence. And I think that's really important to understand, because we can talk about certification and it's great, and we support a lot of what these companies that Ian have been talking about are doing. But what's really important in the real world is if you are tendering for a contract and you are saying to a client that we have experts in the field that can work digitally in a competent manner, what's really important is the people that you put on those projects are able to work in a digitally competent manner. Because even if you've got a tick in the box that says, we've got a badge, that's great. And, again, fully support it. But, you really want those individuals to be competent, because if they're not, your clients are no doubt going to figure that out at some point, and that's not going to be good for an organization. So this is, and please understand this is about an individual qualification of a person and not a company certification. I think the other important thing about the professional certification program, not only is it global in nature, but it's there to encourage actually as many training providers as possible to be competent in the training that they are giving. So there is lots of help and guidance giving to the training providers that are part of this scheme by the individual chapters in each country. What it shouldn't do, of course, is drive commercial gain for any specific certification or training providers. So it's not there to be, abused by one training provider in a country or in an area or in a region. It's there for as many training providers who want to be part of the program to be able to offer competent training in the marketplace. And I'll go on to what the UK and Ireland is doing in due course. It clearly embraces this buildingSMART professional certification program. So again, it's global, it's international in nature, it's been conceived by experts, and it's an opportunity for you to go to approved training providers when it's launched in the UK and Ireland and actually get a training that is underpinned by this kind of program and the guidance and knowledge that is given to the training partners to actually develop their content. Again, I'll come on to that in a bit more detail. I think the other thing is, we really wanted the program to be relevant to the UK, and I'll explain how we've done that in due course. And in that context, we very much want to ensure that it's developing a level of digital competence that's aligned to the UK BIM framework, because fundamentally that is what is being pushed in the UK, and it is the UK BIM framework that is being and the guidance that's associated with it's being developed by not only the UK BIM Alliance, but also BSI and other organisations like CDBB, and I'll come on to that. So the good news is the buildingSMART professional certification that we're going to be launching is very much aligned to what is going on in the UK. And there's been a lot of work involved in the team that I work in to make sure that that happens. It's been an ongoing process for at least 3 years. And we're in a good place now to actually launch the program. So before I go any further, I should really thank the team that's been involved. I won't mention them all because I'll probably forget some of their names, but I really want to thank everyone that's been involved across the UK BIM Alliance and the upskilling team in developing this program. So what are the objectives of the UKI version of the professional certification? And I say that very deliberately because I'm going to explain what the UKI version of it is and how that has come about. So in terms of the UKI specifically, it's to support the standardization of open BIM training content. I've already mentioned the UK BIM framework, so we wanted to make sure that the UKI version of this fully supports the UK BIM framework. Also other specific guidance. So there is lots of guidance out there in the UK and Ireland. I can make in the transforming infrastructure performance guidance documents or document. I can mention the UK BIM Framework learning outcomes document. These are published documents that we wanted to make sure were embedded in this professional certification so that you can be assured that any training provider that gets approved to deliver this training program has the relevant knowledge about what they should be training. So what it is, and this is the other thing to bear in mind, buildingSMART UK and Ireland, or buildingSMART any chapter, or buildingSMART International do not deliver training. What they do is they approve training organisations to deliver the training, but the guidance comes from the chapter, and that's a very important distinction for you to make. And what it then enables you to do is test and qualify these individuals. And I just want to draw on a point that Ian mentioned. At the moment, this is a buildingSMART thing, and it is international in nature, developed by thought leaders across the globe. There is nothing stopping us at some point going to UCAS, or indeed any of the accreditation organizations that exist in all countries that are part of this international accreditation forum, and getting what we are going to be delivering underpinned. But that is not a trivial task. And, we're talking probably a few years rather than a few weeks or months. So that is certainly something we are discussing at an international level, because I do sit on the international committee as part of my representation from buildingSMART UK and Ireland. So bear that in mind. In terms of why is it beneficial? Well, I guess depends who you are on this call, right? So if you're a training provider, then it's got some benefits. I mean, what you can be, again, assured of is that you can make sure that the course content that you are developing is aligned to this international learning framework, which is great because it means that your course should be up to date and reflective of international best practices, as well as UK and Ireland best practices as defined under the UK BIM framework. You'll also benefit from guidance. which I'm going to explain in a second. So if you're a training provider, you'll get guidance from the local chapter, in this case, buildingSMART UK and Ireland. And, you know, we will support you in whichever means or for whatever reason you need in terms of developing content or understanding how the program works, etc. And of course, as a training provider, you'll be able to brand your course as buildingSMART registered. So what about the benefits to the individuals? Well, it's kind of similar, but at an individual level, because you will get standardized content that's built on an international learning framework and standards and best practices. And it's globally recognized. So, you know, people that have the badge, and there are literally over 5,000 people now that have got the badge because the program has been launched in some other countries already. The UK and I decided to not delay, that's the wrong word, but there was a lot of work that has gone into our version of it, which again I will explain, but other countries have launched already. And certainly when I think about man and machine, I didn't really want to talk about man and machine, but I know that man and machine in other countries, for example in the DAC regions, has already put 1,000 people or 1,000 customers through this professional certification. So it's a mark of your competence as an individual. It's a qualification, an individual qualification that tells people that. And it's also, you know, the other benefit, it's a very simple, fast and secure online testing and qualification process once you've taken the training with a buildingSMART qualified training provider, which again, I'm going to explore in a bit more detail. And what's really important in terms of the work that the team has been doing and the work that we've been doing within the UK BIM Alliance in building the UK version of this program is we wanted to make sure that what we did was, you know, covered all domains. So whatever your role in a design and build project is, or even an operation of an asset, we wanted to make sure that the training content that we're going to help the training providers develop really covered all of the different disciplines, and that it covered the key themes that are being talked about in UK and Ireland. And I really don't have time to go into these in a huge amount of detail today because we simply haven't got the time. But there are some key things going on in the UK and Ireland right now in various groups. There's a CEIG, which is the sort of follow-on group from the BIM Experts Interoperability Group, if you have heard of that. And, you know, one of the things they talked about and are very passionate about, as they should be, is this idea of interoperable information during a design and build project. So, you know, we want information to be as interoperable as possible without modification as it goes through a project and is used by different disciplines. So we don't want to modify that data because that introduces errors. And when we get to digital handover, we want to make sure that that information is concise, clear, accurate, high quality, etc., etc. So we want data. You know, I said earlier that BIM is about information management or data. We want that data to be of real value. So we've kind of built that thinking into the training program and what we've built, which I'll come on to. But there are many other things. I mean, some of you will have heard of the new Transforming Infrastructure Performance document that's been released, in which is embedded the information management mandate. So again, this is built into the training program. What is the information management mandate? If you haven't heard about it, well, it's really the sort of update to what was the BIM level 2 mandate back in, I think 2011, if I recall correctly. So there's a new version of that, which is very important for everyone to understand, because that is something that clients, particularly government clients, are going to be informed about as an important part of their responsibility on these projects. So we wanted to make sure that what we did, which is why it's taken a bit of time in the UK and Ireland, actually was very aligned to what's going on in the UK. And that's a couple of things. Many of you have heard of the golden thread of information, and things like Ucas, IFC and COBIs. These are all embedded into what we've done, and of course the UK BIM framework. So this is all part of the assistance documentation that we give to the training providers. The other thing I want to mention very quickly is the buildingSMART program and how it's being built up. So it's built on the many of you might have heard of Bloom's taxonomy. This is really something that was developed in the 50s by Bloom, and it talks about the learning process, how people learn. And this is how buildingSMART has approached this professional certification program. And what Bloom's taxonomy does, without sort of boring you too much, is you've got to think about how people learn. So the first thing you have to be able to do is remember or recall something, a piece of information. Once you can actually recall it, you can then start to understand it, and you can explain what it means. Once you've done that, you can start applying it in a different kind of way. So, and then you can start analyze it and so on. You can read this for yourself. But the idea is the learning process is iterative, where you start with knowledge and understanding, and then you start with applying that concept, to keep it simple, in sort of your work and in your daily activities. So that's what Bloom's digital taxonomy is all about. And this is exactly how buildingSMART has approached this professional certification program. And it essentially is what I've just said. So, you know, there's increasing complexity as you go through these levels of learning, starting with, well, I've got to remember it. Once I remember it, I can understand it. Once I apply it, then I can start applying it, And eventually you can start creating your own concepts once you've got a certain amount of level of experience and skill. So that's probably enough to go. You can go read about Bloom's taxonomy on the internet. So how has that been applied by buildingSMART? Essentially, this is how it's been applied. So what we're talking about is two different levels of program. So at the bottom of this triangle, we're talking about the professional certification that I'm talking about today. It's called foundational knowledge. So this is about remembering a concept, understanding it, defining it, etc. And once you get above that, we're talking about practitioner skills. So once you've understood a concept, what do you then do to actually apply it, or how do you apply it? How do you analyze it? How do you evaluate it? But what we're really talking about is these foundation programs. And as you'll see at the bottom, there are proposed to be 9 foundation programs within buildingSMART International. The one that is being developed and launched by many chapters is the one at the bottom, which is the basic one, which is this kind of foundational knowledge. And it is a fact that you have to have that level of competence before you be able to take any of the other curriculum and any of the 8 curriculum above it. And those curriculum, of course, are not all launched yet. The COBE one is, the building performance one is very close. The owner operator contractor designer one is being worked on, but is not going to be any time soon, certainly well into next year before those get launched. But the underpinning one, the one that's really important, and the one that we'll be launching in UK and Ireland very, very shortly, is this foundational basic knowledge. And it's that we're going to talk about in a bit more detail. Before I do that, let me just talk. I'd mentioned at the very beginning about industry alignment and how important that was. Again, I just want to tie these bits together in case you didn't understand. So I've mentioned the UK BIM Alliance. I don't really need to say any more about that. You've also got the Centre for Digital Built Britain, which is sort of funded by government, if I can keep it very simple in terms of the work that they're doing. And you've got obviously BSI, as in British Standards Institute. And those 3 organisations are really what are behind this thing called the UK BIM Framework. And if you go to the UK BIM Framework website, there is plenty of documentation and guidance that is produced by that group of organisations in the context of the UK BIM Framework. And because that's what's going on in the UK, that was fundamentally important to what we wanted to put into the UK and Ireland launch of this professional certification programme. Where does buildingSMART play? Well, I've already mentioned buildingSMART UK and Ireland is essentially a subcommittee of the UK BIM Alliance, and it is part of a global community, which is headed by buildingSMART International, that is driving this adoption of open BIM and international standards. And of course, you've got in chapters in many, many other countries. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done in the UK around what we are going to be launching in due course. So we really wanted what we launched in the UK to obviously fully support open BIM and what buildingSMART is doing on a global level, but also the UK BIM Framework. And for those of you that know what the UK BIM Framework is, it is essentially built around the ISO 19650 series of standards, one of which is part of the Ucas accreditation that Ian has talked about, which is 19650-2, but we wanted to make sure in terms of the professional certification that we covered a wider area in terms of the training that we're going to be doing for individuals. So we fully embrace the UK BIM framework and its guidance in what we've done. And my screen has frozen. Now it's unfrozen. So coming back to what we've done. So we're supporting the UK BIM framework and Open BIM. We've got the basic foundational program, which is the one that we're going to be fundamentally focused on at this point. There are practitioner programs being developed, being talked about at an international level, but again, they're not here yet. Again, there is one, which is the COBE one, which is here. That's the only one. But in terms of what UK and Ireland is doing, we really want to support what the UK BIM Alliance wants to do, which is kind of raise the level of digital competence in the UK. So that's where we're going to start. So what are we recommending? We're recommending, firstly, I mean, no, you don't have to get a badge if you don't want to get a badge. It's entirely up to you as an organisation. But what we do recommend is that if you want to take an educational training programme, that you should take a course that embodies the UK BIM framework, UK national guidance and Open BIM. So that's really important. The Open BIM thing is covered by the international program that's already developed by buildingSMART International. What are we doing? We're making sure we cover those other two bits in what we are launching in the UK and Ireland. And it's also very much aligned. There is a document out there which you can get from the UK BIM Framework website, which is called the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes. We worked very closely with the team on that and made sure that we covered that in this professional certification. So let's talk about what these organisations are doing then and what we're putting together. So the UK BIM Alliance, so the buildingSMART community on the left, the international group, if you will, for which we have the UKAS representation, me and my team, or the team that's worked with me. There's lots of chapters that have developed the framework and the content contained therein. So essentially what the program is they have developed a set of learning outcomes, and which we will call modules 1 to 5, and a body of knowledge that supports those learning outcomes. And that's really important because I'm going to show you the learning outcomes in a second. And you'll probably look at them and say, well, if that's all you're providing to training providers, there's a lot of latitude for them to create their course content. What we do within buildingSMART, within the buildingSMART professional certification program, is give them more than that. So we give them a body of knowledge, so a document that says this is what you must be training. So what does that mean is you can be assured that those training providers have not only understood what the learning outcomes are, but they've also got guidance, detailed guidance about what they should be training. And that guidance is developed by this global community of experts. Now, what does that mean for an individual chapter in a country? Well, that's fine because that's all international, but each country, many countries, maybe all countries, actually have their own standards and guidance as well that they publish. So what you get here is an opportunity as a chapter to develop a second body of knowledge, which we'll call module 6. And that body of knowledge actually is specific to that region. So it gives us the opportunity to tell training providers that, yes, you must produce content that is focused on the body of knowledge modules 1 to 5, the international Open BIM content, if I can simplify it as that, but it's very much based around the ISO standards. But we also have the opportunity to put some body of knowledge content to the training providers specifically for the UK. So this is where we can define the UK construction strategy, transforming infrastructure performance, and so on and so forth. And that's really the way that we go about how we've gone about developing the program for the UKI launch. So before I go on, I'm sure we've covered this now in enough detail with Ian's questions, but what Ian's been talking about is on the left at this moment in time, the ISO 19650-2. The object of conformity is that process, and that's the pilot program that is being underpinned by Ucas. What we're talking about is providing personal individual qualifications. And I think, as Ian has already pointed out, we could get the scheme that buildingSMART has developed underpinned by UCAS, or in fact the accreditation services on a global basis. And you know, it's not, as I've already said, a trivial task. So what we're doing right now is launching this foundational knowledge program, which is about knowledge and understanding, and the practitioner programs or curricula that are coming very much focused on applying that understanding and competence. So we said that the buildingSMART UKAS professional certification is Open BIM and UK BIM Framework. So there is a set of learning outcomes here on the left, which have been produced by buildingSMART International, and we've had input to that, of course. But what we've developed in the UK is some additional learning outcomes, which makes up our module 6, so that you can again be assured that the training providers, training partners that are approved by buildingSMART have these learning outcomes, and actually, more importantly, have the bodies of knowledge that they need to help them develop the content they should be developing. So it's not as simple as just sort of pointing out what one of these learning outcomes is. There's a whole document and a whole section in that document around each of these learning outcomes and what they should be teaching. And the combination of those two things is the professional certification, the foundation basic, being launched by buildingSMART UK and Ireland. So let me just talk about this professional certification one more time, just so it's really clear. We're focusing on the bottom layer in the UK and Ireland, and we are focusing on this basic program or basic curricula, as is the official terminology in buildingSMART. And it is made up of these two learning outcomes, set of learning outcomes, plus the accompanying bodies of knowledge that are given to the training providers. And that's what's really important. So up here you can see the learning outcomes that are produced. I can't actually see that very well from where I'm standing in the studio, so I've got it on a bit of paper, which I'll just quickly go through a couple. So essentially, if you just look at the learning outcomes on the left produced by buildingSMART, you know, the first learning outcome is understand what BIM is, why it's needed, and recognize its specific terminology. So there's a whole bunch of sub points to support that learning outcome, and within the body of knowledge there's a whole bunch of guidance for the training providers about what they should be teaching. If you go on to point 3, just as an example, we then get into the more specific project information management components aligned to the ISO 19650 series, and again there's lots of content that supports that. If you go to the right, of course, this is what the UK and Ireland team, the team that I've been involved in, has been developing. And you'll notice there that 6.1 recognised the contextual requirements of the UK BIM framework and the UKI government construction and industrial strategy. So that encompasses many of the things that I've talked about. We also go on in 6.3 to very much look at the asset and organisational lifecycle environment. So we thought very clearly and very long about what we should be telling training providers to teach and what those training providers will get as guidance to develop their content. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. And I'll come to the timelines in a second. Just to finish that off, the body of knowledge from the international team very much focused on Open BIM, IFC, and of course the ISO 19650 series, as I've just pointed out. But the piece that we've added, which is the UK version or UK and Ireland version, this module 6 covers things like the UK BIM Framework, as I've mentioned, construction playbook, the national annex to ISO 19650, which is very specifically for the UK, of course, construction 2025, and so on. So a whole bunch of other things that we've included in the content that must be provided by the training providers. And also the information management mandate and any other things that might come out in the future. So that bottom square there is meant to represent, you know, this is a living document. So it will get refreshed on a periodic basis. So if there are new, so I mentioned work, for example, that was done by the BIM Experts Interoperability Group, now the CEIG, around information interoperability. Maybe they'll publish something called a set of learning outcomes, who knows? Whether they do or not is not the point. The point is this is a living document that we will be able to evolve over time to make sure that the content provided by the training providers is up to date and relevant to the UK and Ireland construction industry. And that is what makes up the professional certification that we are launching. So my final couple of slides is really just talking about the timeline and the processes involved. So how do we go about doing this? Where are we at? So essentially, this is a very basic timeline, just to give you some sense of where we are. So the body of knowledge for the UK and Ireland and the question database that goes with it have been produced. They have been given to buildingSMART International for approval. We've had the first draft back with some comments, but not significant. So actually that piece of work will be done very shortly. And I am talking the next 2 to 4 weeks, let's say. In terms of training provider selection, actually that is underway. So a number of training providers have approached buildingSMART, have been approached to see if they want to be involved in this program. And there are many, actually a number that Ian has already mentioned have expressed interest in the program. So we expect the training provider applications approvals to be happening also over the next few weeks. And then the training providers will take exams themselves. Obviously, we want their trainers to be able to to make sure their trainers are competent. And they will need to then launch their training courses. And what I can tell you for a fact is the program that we are launching and the bodies of knowledge that we have developed are so comprehensive that I fully expect that most training providers will have to develop or tweak their content to actually have a course that will actually meet the requirements. And most importantly, get the students through the exam, which is what people want to be doing. So my gut feel tells me that the training providers, even though they'll get approved this side of Christmas, potentially the first courses that are buildingSMART approved will be coming out in Q1 next year. Alongside that, of course, buildingSMART have been developing, and the UK BIM Alliance have been developing content that we launched on the website very soon. And there'll be campaigns and so on and so forth that will, really, so you're one of the first audiences. We've had a couple of others, but you're one of the first audiences to sort of get this information. But there'll be a concerted effort, I'm sure, once the web pages are up to really advertise what we're doing here with the professional certification program, because we think it's so important to what we want to be doing in the UK to drive the industry forward and to make it future proof. And the final piece I want to add is, what about the students and what about the trainers and how does it all work? So let's talk about the moving parts. So the moving parts, of course, being the companies and the students that are involved. So in the centre there, you've got the local chapter. This is buildingSMART UK and Ireland. On the left, you've got potential training providers, and on the right, you've got potential students. Obviously, at the top, you've got buildingSMART International that run the program. And they have a platform which is run on an application called Moodle. This is the Moodle exam platform, and this is where the students will take the exam. So essentially the process for every chapter, and the UK and Ireland has been through this, is the same. So we start with the UK, or the chapter, in this case, the UK and Ireland, submitting their body of knowledge and question database to buildingSMART International for approval. Once that's approved, the question database, of course, gets uploaded onto the Moodle platform. And that triggers, obviously, the availability of the UK and Ireland program for students. The training providers, of course, at that point need to so that will be the launch. The training providers then need to apply. And as I've said, we're already into this process. We've had initial expressions of interest. Formal applications will be made, as I say, in the next few weeks. Once the training providers have made their application and confirmed that they can support the content, the body of knowledge, the learning outcomes that have been defined by the buildingSMART UK and I chapter, they will get approved and they will become a approved training provider. So that's what the training providers do. Of course, at that point, they will need to start developing content if they need to and publishing course dates. So that's we're well into that program right now. Once that's done, then of course the student will need to come on an approved training course with an approved training provider, take the course, and as part of the process, they will then go onto the Moodle exam platform and take the exam and hopefully, of course, gain the certification. In terms of the exam itself, in case anyone's sort of curious, it is a 30-minute exam. It's chronological in order. So the first set of questions will be for the learning outcome 1, second learning outcome 2, second set of questions, learning outcome 3, and so on and so forth. And in the case of the UK, there are 6 learning outcomes, so there'll be 6 sections to it. So That's how it works in chronological order. What I really want to do is just take you through that. Again, I can't read that, so I have printed this off on a paper. So essentially what you do is you register with the training provider. You will receive a student login from the training provider. And that allows you to log into the Moodle platform and actually get familiar with the exam. So you can actually take demo tests and so on and so forth, if you so desire. Once you've completed your training, there'll be a window opened by the training provider on the platform that allows you to take the exam. You will sit the exam. Typically, that will be, I guess, at the end of the training course provider's course. That would be the obvious point to do that. And you will be informed immediately after the 30 minutes whether you have passed, the pass rate being 75%, and you will be able to download and print the certificate. That's kind of how the process works. If you unfortunately don't pass, then the opportunity is there to, it says option, actually you're immediately given the option to retake the test. So you can do that straight away. So that essentially is how the program runs, and kind of hopefully I've answered questions about where we're at and why I'm so passionate about the program, because it is really underpinned by, you know, a lot of experts around the globe, and actually a lot of experts in the UK and Ireland that have worked very hard on developing that module 6. So that's essentially the sort of summary. I can take questions, and if there are any immediate questions, sounds like there are, so let's have them.
Thanks, Phil. Really interesting presentation there. We've got a couple of questions. I think most of them can be and have been answered through Q&A, but there's a couple that I think is worthwhile just answering live if we can.
I shall do my best.
So we have a question from Siobhan, I think it's pronounced. What can an individual do to start this competence if their company is new to BIM level 2 style projects, if they have no present experience?
What can they do? Well, I guess the first thing to do is to take some training. I mean, that's really the important thing, to approach a training provider that is competent enough to deliver that. I mean, candidly, if you want to wait for the certification, you've got to wait until we finish this process. Therefore, you would have to wait till the Q1 sometimes next year to actually be able to take a certified training course, because we're not at that point. What I would suggest in the meantime is, if you contact a training provider, then, you know, there's an obvious one on this course, on this call that you could contact, but I'm not going to say that because I'm here for the UK BIM Alliance. You know, go to a training provider that is already delivering some fundamental basic training, and talk to them about what they can do, because what I'm sure you could do is you could take some training that will raise your level of competence, and then, you know, then you'll be at a point next year to actually take the buildingSMART professional certification training in whatever guise that comes, you know, whichever training course provider you decide to go with. And I think your question is quite pertinent, because you've mentioned BIM level 2, and yet there's no such thing as BIM level 2, and sadly we do see BIM level 2 still being quoted in tender documents. But actually it's kind of defunct now. It doesn't exist. You know, there's a new information management mandate, there's an ISO 19650 series of documents, there's UK BIM Framework documentation. I mean, I would certainly suggest you could go to the UK BIM Framework website and start reading some of the guidance that's on there, because it is extremely useful. But also contact a training provider that can give you some individual recommendations on what you could do, because I'm answering it, but I don't know you, and I don't know what your competence levels really are. So it's best to contact one of us or an expert to really discuss that requirement. What was the second question?
Perfect. I have one more, which is a good one. I think it's worth shouting out there. So question from Darren. And the question is, other than clearly being passionate about the subject, of course, what brought you to want to become involved with buildingSMART and this certification program?
That's a very good question. And I think actually you hit the nail on the head with your precursor to the question, which is I'm just very passionate about it. And I think, you know, as a supplier of consulting services at Man & Machine, we do see a lot of poorly run projects. really badly run projects. I'm sorry to say that, but we do see that a lot. And, you know, a lot of companies that are yet to really embrace this move to digital transformation, but it's kind of coming like a freight train, and a lot of people are doing it. And I just feel really passionate that if we get it right in the UK and Ireland, and this is perhaps the real answer to your question, is we will be much more competitive on a global basis, because our industry will be well informed, our industry will run projects that are efficient, our industry will run products that are less wasteful, and that's what I feel passionate about at the end of the day. So, you know, that's why what Man and Machine is all about, but more importantly, that's what the UK BIM Alliance is about. So I wanted to support the UK BIM Alliance in as many ways as I possibly could at a personal level. So one of those was to throw myself into it and start doing 7 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And the other one is to really sponsor the activity that they're doing and the projects that they're running. So, you know, I've taken a lead because we have expertise in education and upskilling, but there are many other projects going on in the UK BIM Alliance that are equally deserving of people's time and effort. So yeah, I should probably shout out to the whole UK BIM Alliance team and buildingSMART, to everybody involved. Thank you for the effort you put in.
Thank you, Phil. There are a few others, but I think looking at what Nathan's got to close this session up, a lot of those questions will be answered in some of his remaining slides. So please bear with us for a couple of moments while we switch Phil and Nathan, as they are in the same room and they've got to distance each other while they step away from the camera and the mic. So give us a couple of seconds, we'll put a quick transitional video on and we'll get Nathan on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Thanks for your attention.
I think it's really interesting to see in terms of the work that Ucas are doing, or what Ucas have planned in that respect. And also I appreciate there's one final date I think everyone's waiting for in terms of what's coming from them. But also in terms of the work that Phil's been doing with buildingSMART, as there's quite a few people on the within that organisation. And I think it's really important. I think from my point of view, when I talk to customers, I know Phil just mentioned it in terms of what he's been seeing there about the way projects are run, but the amount of the knowledge from one organisation to another, albeit certainly from the contractor point of view to the client side, I mean, it can be completely different. And I think ultimately, by these changes coming to effect, and ultimately they kind of move into, rather than being a tick box exercise or having a badge, so to speak, in terms of this is what we actually are able to deliver, or how we deliver it, I think is really important. And I think as an industry as a whole, all of a sudden it'll start to change and be one recognised way of working, one recognised way of in terms of understanding, but importantly there's that certification side as well to come. So how do Man and Machine help? I think that's the important thing in terms of how we can support our customers. And I think there's certainly a few areas that we can provide in terms of actually upskilling the teams and working through there. But as you'll see on the graphic above me, it's always important to have a plan. So in terms of, appreciate there's people on the call and certainly looking through the chat where the questions raised are with, maybe this is your kind of like starting point, or even if you say you're working in an organization where you're a lot further along this graphic, where you've done a lot of these things already in terms of your BIM policies, your BIM strategies. Every single time as this changes, be it from BIM when there's the initial conception of the idea, or level 2, or the ISO standard, and then like different annexes we've had now, you need to plan actually where you're trying to get to. It's not just about the projects you're looking to deliver. Ultimately, that's bringing about the change. I appreciate it's very hard to say, right, we're going to make a change for the better, or we're going to deliver our projects like this. But if your projects don't require it, it's just added cost, extra work. But you always need to have a plan. And this is what I always talk about, my team always talk about. And actually, where are you going? Where is it that you are now? Where are you trying to get to? And I appreciate having a well thought out strategy plan, and ultimately getting the organization on board. That's the most important thing in terms of actually we're doing this for such and such reason. And as I mentioned at the start, when we opened up the event, and about the different industry drivers, not just in terms of BIM, but sustainability, all those types of things, you need to have a plan. And with this coming on board, and with the changes being made by buildingSMART, and with UCAS and certification, this is important. The plan needs to be there in that respect. So having that plan there, we can help you do that in terms of actually assessing your organization. And like you say, on as you'll see on screen, and going through those different phases, be it over a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, 24-month plan, it completely differs. It depends how quickly you want to go, how much you want to do, whether you want us to get involved in it. ultimately we will try to steer away from just actually doing consultancy on a project. And the reason being is you only get the value from that particular project. When another one comes up, what do you do then? Do you outsource it again? Ultimately, there becomes a time where you need to insource it or get the relevant capabilities and people in place to actually deliver the projects, because they're just going to become more and more prevalent in that respect. So we can help support that. And whether that's a case of, although I mentioned about information management on a project and consulting, quality insurance side, or even CD deployment, both from internal and kind of a project based environment, we can do that for you. But in terms of what actually takes us above and beyond that is our affiliation with the UK BIM Alliance, with buildingSMART, and as an associate consultant of BSI. So we are able to understand and real time look at what being released in terms of the learning outcomes for the training from buildingSMART and the UK BIM Alliance, and actually then advise you, train you, be able to consult on the project. So by having our, I suppose, in terms of working with those organisations, it really helps us provide that support that you need. When we then start to take this in terms of specific training, so I appreciate Phil's been talking about in terms of learning outcomes and a particular, I suppose, program that you can go on. That's one element in that respect. You're going to have some specialists within your organisation, but in terms of what Man and Machine do, we can support you from the design point of view, and we can support you from like the aftercare point of view, what we call our long tail services. But also when we look at, particularly with BIM, and I appreciate for many people on the call, the USAT acronym is, I suppose, yesterday's term in that respect. But when we look at that, and more specifically looking at the digital construction or the BIM and digital information management side, we can provide, I suppose, an overview for people that are more director level or commercial point of view, an understanding of like the fundamentals of what's going on and what's actually been mentioned earlier on, being able to actually hold dialogue or a conversation with potential projects or potential clients, speak to them, and also in turn mitigate risk in terms of what they then say, yeah, we'll sign up to that, we can deliver that. They take it in-house, and then it comes to the teams, you go, okay, well, we're not too sure we can deliver that, or you're not really you don't know what it is that you're actually being asked to deliver. So having understanding that's, I suppose, important from the outset. But in terms of all the other training courses there, then it just depends upon what you want to do. As I mentioned, in terms of the actual overview training, that's typically like a one-day course. Like people that are new to BIM or are new to like the ISO set of standards, we look at the principles of digital construction and then take that through with all the relevant processes, documentation, and areas that you need to be aware of in our one-day course. When you start to look beyond that, and in terms of what Phil's been talking about with the learning outcomes delivered or being set out by buildingSMART, we've actually now revamped our training courses, or training course, sorry. So typically we used to have a 2-day course that was BIM for project and construction professionals. Now this has changed in terms of the information and project management course, where it's a 4-dayer. And what that means is we've understood not only in terms of what's been set out at this moment in time for the learning outcomes, learning objectives, sorry, from the training by buildingSMART, but we've embedded that into our training, and we're already seeing people book onto that course. Appreciate that there's obviously still some work to do in terms of our training courses being certified or being, I suppose, like an approved training provider of buildingSMART, but we're going to go that way, and that is something that's important to us. And I appreciate what that then means in terms of that individual certification. We are now looking at, with our 4-day training course, being able to provide something that will then provide you with the skills to then go and reap what it is that you're after from the recognised body of buildingSMART, which is extremely important to us. I appreciate this has been almost a long time coming because of the people that sit on buildingSMART. It's not their day-to-day job in that respect. It's something that we've been pushing for quite some time. Now we finally have that, and we've now built that into our training syllabus, and we have that 4-day course. We've already filled our first course early next year. I appreciate there are going to be a few more that we look to diarise and run, and that's certainly one that I encourage people to have a look at, given what we've been speaking about before. But ultimately, as I go back and talk about the previous couple of slides, you still need to have a plan. It's not just about an individual doing some training and then off we go, because we just have the same problems that we've had over the last few years. when it becomes almost a certificate for me being able to work on a project or be awarded a project. It needs to be more than that. We then also have some supplementary courses delving into COBE, IFC. There's also a COBE and IFC workshop, but it's ultimately just about what it is that you really need. And I think ultimately to do that and to tell you, we would need to understand a bit more about you. So it's always one where, yeah, okay, we have these courses, but they might be relevant for you. It might be a case of we look to almost put a bespoke offering together in that respect to meet your training objectives or learning outcomes. So there are courses. I appreciate that as a quick run through in terms of how we're supporting it. I think we've covered most of the questions from the team in the chat boxes and what's come through. And I know Ian's answered a few, or he answered the question earlier on, likewise with Phil's. So this takes me to, I suppose, rounding up in that respect for the event for this morning. I really appreciate such a high number of people joining the call. It's certainly, they're always our popular events in terms of what we tend to run. I appreciate we've got some guest speakers from UCAS and obviously from buildingSMART. But when we typically run the events on in person, and I suppose in years gone by, they've always been more popular ones. So it's great to see so many faces returning to hear what we have to say and who we've been working with and ultimately what we're doing moving forward. We are going to be answering questions afterwards, so I'd always encourage you to pick up the phone, speak with the team, and also drop us an email in that respect. But just to finally round up, we have got some more events coming through. They're yet to be scheduled, so keep an eye on that. Twofold really. Many of you may have seen our Future and Design and Build events, or the series that have been running over the last few weeks and months. We are about to announce a further 3 technology-focused events going into the end of the year and early next. And also, as and when we see fit with, I suppose, industry updates or anything that comes out in terms of ultimately UCAS or buildingSMART or any other areas that we see in that respect, then look, we will be very proactive in actually hosting something like this again. More than likely it will be a virtual event, but I'm sure the time will come to visit people or invite you to an event of our own at one of our offices in that respect. So feel free to call us. Like I say, pick up the phone if you've got any questions from today. I appreciate we've covered an awful lot of content. Feel free to call into the team. There'll be people on hand to speak to you. And likewise, if you want to find any of the content that I've covered in terms of how we can support you, visit our website, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Take care.